Still good morning. Good morning. This is Tim Carter, Superintendent of Wilson Central School District, for the parent reopening meeting for the high school. We're going to get started actually right now. I'm sorry for the 4-minute delay. No real good reason other than the fact it took us a minute to get this up and running. With me in the room is Mrs. Jennifer Pavan, who is our district clerk, and she's going to help manage the chat if any questions come up during this meeting. I also have Mr. Galgovich, the high school principal. He's sitting behind me, actually a little more than 6 feet behind me, and he'll interject in a couple things. So welcome, and I'm glad you were able to join us for this event. The goal of this reopening conversation, and actually the entire reopening process, is for our school community, our parents, students, staff, teachers, to all work together so our schools can open up in as normal fashion as possible. As part of this, I'll talk about the reopening plan. I also will give some hints into why we went with certain models over others at elementary compared to middle school and high school. I'm going to go through multiple aspects of the reopening plan. The two assumptions that I'm making is, one, that you have read the reopening plan, or at least took a look at the plan we pulled out separately for learning for high school and middle school, and the hybrid model, that you've taken a look at that. You should have a lot of questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer all of those today. If through all of this you continue to have questions, or you have a particular specific concern or a specific thing we have to work with, you can call that 751-9399 number. That number goes directly to Jen Pavan, the district clerk, and we are in our 5th or 6th parent reopening meeting, and she sat through most of our meetings and conversations. If she can't answer it, she will find somebody to answer those questions for you, or forward you to the building principals that may help with that answer. There are some specific things that you may need to have asked that relates to your child specifically. Rules of engagement. So this is a YouTube channel specific, so I can't see you, but you can see us, and you're in my office. It is live. There's about a minute, maybe 2-minute delay between me saying something to you and it coming out on your end. So I will keep that in mind when I'm asking questions and things like that. Also, there's a assumption that some of you may have already heard what I'm going to say, but I also assuming that some people, this is your first time hearing it. So I'm going to keep the same pattern where I'm going to spend some time going through the plan, and I will stop when questions start popping up and Mrs. Pavan tells me that there's somebody asking a question. You can ask a question during a segment or at the end or at any time. I don't mind jumping around. I have a list of topics I want to cover, and I will make sure I cover that. So that's the rules of engagement. The only other thing, that if you haven't done one of these interactive YouTube, you have the ability to interact with me anytime by going to the bottom right corner where it says say something and typing your question, comment, concern in, and then hitting the triangle. That's a sideways triangle, almost like an arrow. That will post your comment or your question, and I will answer it or respond to it as best I can. If it's a specific concern that I may not have an answer to, I may say, I'll give you a call back, or we may just write it down and answer it in the next one. There are still 3 parent reopening meetings available. There is an elementary and a middle school Thursday of this week, and then there is a high school next week, Monday, I believe. There's also, we're in the process of doing a parent forum for specific students with IEPs. So special ed students, we will do a special ed and 504 students that have accommodations. We'll talk about that separately in its own parent forum. Okay, so let me get started. The first part of our plan is cleaning and sanitizing. So Mr. Harmon, our high school, our district facilities director has come up with a plan specific to each building. So the high school plan, while very similar, has some nuances to it that are different than the building at the elementary school, specifically because at the high school, middle school, kids are going to be moving from class to class, just in smaller groups. So part of this plan is following the CDC guidelines for cleaning every single night, and also following the CDC guidelines for deep cleaning in between cohorts. So when you change cohorts or you switch groups of students, there needs to be more than just the sanitizing of highly frequently touched surfaces and desks and things like that. So there's more that has to be done. So that's why we have that Wednesday as a remote day, and that will be the day that we're doing some deep cleaning in between the two cohorts. And it's also what we're going to be doing on Friday night and possibly over the weekend, depending if we can't get it done on Friday. Part of his sanitation plan is the training of his staff. So he's gone through and trained his head custodians at each building, and also each individual cleaner and custodian on what the CDC guidelines are for cleaning and sanitizing for COVID. And part of those of that procedure is that each staff member was given written directions about what needs to be done, and then also verbally explain to them what needs to be done. Also part of this plan is each custodian and cleaner has a section of the building that's assigned to them that they're responsible for. They know their responsibilities. They've been told and trained on what they need to get done, and that every single night they will sign off that they assure the district, assure the community that they have taken and done their part in the cleaning and sanitizing of the building. So that's the cleaning and sanitizing in the evening. There are some things that need to be done during the day. We will have some staff available to continue to sanitize those high frequently touched places, bathrooms, rails, doorknobs, things like that. That'll continue throughout the school day, but in the evening, that's when we get into the classrooms and things like that. So one of the reasons why we were able to change classes is that and this kind of bridges into the health and safety. So we have installed hand sanitizers in every room, some rooms even multiple hand sanitizers. We have bottle hand sanitizers for every classroom, along with the little spray bottles that the New York State governor provided, the New York Cleans. We have a stockpile of hand sanitizer. So every time a child enters into a room and then leaves that room, they need to hand sanitize their hand. That gives them the ability to be able to sit at that desk and be able to work and interact with whatever materials the teacher is using. The guidelines say in order to interact and put your hands on high touch areas, you have to actually hand sanitize prior to entering touching the items, and then when you leave. So student screening. Part of our plan, part of the guidelines is to have a student health screen completed. We have this accomplished by a health screen page that will be on the website. It's in the process of being completed. It will be done prior to school. It actually is almost completed now. We just have to, some of the older class, some of the 11th and 12th grade homerooms need to be put in. So it'll be listed by grade and then by the student's homeroom teacher. So every morning, students are going to be required to get up, take their temperature, and fill out a COVID screen, just like many of us have to do for work. That is a requirement prior to entering into the school. And why we're doing it at home and have it student-driven, 2 reasons. One, it assures that it's done as much as possible prior to entering the school, which is when it's supposed to be, prior to getting on a bus and prior to coming to school. It also is a management issue. I do not have staff personnel to be able to test and do temperature checks of every student prior to coming in. The guidelines for temperature checks require certain PPE, very similar to what you'll see our nurses wearing: visor gowns, N95 masks, gloves, for everyone taking temperatures. If we were able to do that, which we are not able to do financially, we would lose a lot of our staff to doing temperature checks in the morning and not being able to supervise and get the students up and moving into the classrooms and get the instructional period done. So that being said, we're asking, as part of that partnership, that parents and students, high school students are certainly old enough to do this, but parents themselves ensure that the child's doing it and also ensure that it's done as accurate as possible. So that's the health screen. When the child comes to school, that health screen will be checked by the homeroom teacher, and if it's on A cohort days, then the teacher will look in front of them and see if all the students, A through L, or in cohort A, are actually in front of them and have a screen done. And if they don't, that student will be sent to the nurse, and they'll be asked, the nurse will do the screen. And I know that we do not have the ability to line kids up, so I'm sure that if a student is forgetting to do it day in and day out, there will be some consequences for that student, because it is part of the partnership that they need to do to be able to return safely. So that's the health screen. Any questions, please don't hesitate to pop them into the little box, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go through. So part of this reopening guidance from the state requires us to also train students on proper hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, when to hand sanitize, when not to hand sanitize, proper use of masks, all those different things that I not only have to train the teachers on, but also we have to train the students on. This is required because we're going to have a remote distance model, an in-person model, and a hybrid going back and forth. That's our in-person. Half of the students will be in person at a time. Because we have those two models going on, we have to ensure that the teachers have a good understanding and the students have a good understanding of how to operate in this remote world. So we've changed the beginning of school. The student calendar is on the website. We changed the student calendar is on the website. It's the student calendar. But this is basically what the beginning of school is going to look like. So September 2nd, which has been a superintendent's conference day, will continue to be a superintendent's conference day. And then Tuesday the 8th and Wednesday the 9th, we have added them both as superintendent conference days. That gives me 3 days in order to get teachers and administrators to assist getting teachers in our tech department, getting the proper equipment, teaching them how to use that equipment to be in the remote world, and then also to be able to train them on the proper COVID procedures, respiratory hygiene, all those things that I just mentioned, and also working on movement through the building, because there are some social distancing and directional things and staircases. We have up staircases and down staircases. You walk on this side of the hall. So all those procedures, lining up to go into the cafeteria 6 feet apart, all those kind of things, need to be done in order to get our students ready. So, and I know there's a question, and I will answer that in a second, as soon as I finish with the opening schedule. So the 8th and 9th are superintendent conference days. The first student day for middle school, high school is the 10th of September. Now, that 10th of September is only for cohort A students. The distance learning students will not log in that day. Okay? Cohort A students, they're going to be trained on the hand hygiene, the respiratory hygiene, social distancing, the directionals in the building, and they're going to kind of go through their schedule with a lot smaller kids in the building in order to make sure that they're following where they need to be, masks on, what's the proper, when can you take it off, when can't you take it off, things like that. All that, the rituals, routines, and training on how you log in school, how you log in at home, all those things need to be taken care of. So that's the A day, the 10th, Thursday the 10th. Friday B day, which is the 11th, is when B students, cohort B students, are going to be in doing the same thing as the A students. On that Friday, A students will not log in. On the Thursday, the B students will not log in. It's just for the students that are in person. Our really full force distance learning, continuity of learning plan begins on the 14th, Monday the 14th. Distance learning kids will log in. It'll be an A day, so A cohort kids will be in building. The B students will be logging in from home. And we'll talk about how that's going to work as time goes on. So that is all on the website. It'll be sent out in letters from principals, through emails. All of that is the schedule for the first week of school. So the official first day is the 14th for continuity of learning. However, the 10th A students will show up, and then the 11th B cohort students will show up. Okay, there's one question, actually two questions. Go ahead with the first one.
Can students carry their own hand sanitizer and use it in addition to the school's hand sanitizer?
The answer to that is if you are a student that's being driven to school by your parents, walking to school, you can bring hand sanitizer. There are all sorts of regulations against hand sanitizer on a bus. So if your child is being bused to school, they cannot have hand sanitizer with them. We've confirmed that with the bus garage. Second question?
When will we reimburse for the canceled band trip?
You can give a call to that 751-9399 number, and I'll have Mr. Galgovich follow up with that. We don't need to do that as part of this chat, right? We'll take care of that and talk one-on-one with them, because it doesn't involve all the people on this. Next question.
Should students bring Chromebooks to school daily?
Yes. Chromebooks should come to school every single day. They should go home every single day. They should be powered up at home. While they're working and doing their homework, they should be plugging in and making sure that their battery's charged for the next day. We'll have some ability to do that here. But yeah, Chromebooks should be going back and forth, and all of their possessions will be with them in their book bag. So no lockers will be assigned at the beginning of the year. I can't tell you how long we're going to do that. As soon as the guidelines lessen up, or we figure out a way to include the lockers as part of the sanitizing. Because as soon as the student opens up a locker and puts something in it, the inside and the outside of that locker has to be sanitized for the next day. And there is not enough personnel in all of Niagara County to help get that done with every locker we have here at the high school and middle school. We would spend all night trying to get the lockers clean. So we want to first get the routine of kids coming back, getting those high frequency areas and sanitizing, and then we'll reevaluate at the end of September whether or not we can then start assigning lockers to certain areas and see how that goes. I'm well aware that kids are going to start wearing coats when the weather starts turning. My hope is by November, when the weather starts really turning to the cold, we're either all back in and we're able to go about our business and add lockers, or we're all remote. If not, kids will be carrying. If we can't sanitize lockers, I can't hand out locker accommodations to kids and let them use their lockers. So we'll have to find another alternative to doing the whole coat thing. I think I answered that question about Chromebooks. Yes, I did. Go ahead. Next question.
BOCES is saying they are starting classes on September 8th. Does that mean we are going to be required to drive them the first week of school opening to BOCES site in Sandmore?
Okay, they didn't tell me that, but that's not necessarily uncommon. We will have to get back to you because there's a lot of things with BOCES that with transportation we're struggling with. So I have said all along that we are committed to transporting right now kids from school to BOCES and back to school. I didn't know they were starting on the 8th. We will I have a superintendent's meeting this afternoon. I'll confirm that information, and then we'll try and put a plan together. If our kids are going to BOCES, then we will find a way to accommodate that. I will have to get back to you in our final session, but I'll also make sure that a message goes out to the BOCES, to the 11th and 12th grade parents prior to school starting with what we have in relation to BOCES. So right now, we have a plan to be able to transport our students to and from BOCES. We're looking, I know there are some parents out there that have called and said, listen, my child doesn't have the ability to drive. There's 16 morning slots and 16 afternoon slots, but if your child does have their license and has the ability to drive, they can drive right to BOCES. Parents can drive the child right to BOCES, or they can drive them to school. I know there's some parents out there that have contacted me. There's a few of them that said, I don't have the ability to drive anywhere. What are we going to do? I don't have an answer for that yet. We're still trying to figure out, can we manage something here? Can we manage something at BOCES? I don't have an answer for that yet, and I have 3 weeks of school to go to come up with that answer, but I will make sure that it is in our memory and in our minds that we need to come up with some kind of plan for the BOCES students that don't have the ability to get back and forth to school. If they have ability to get back and forth to school or back and forth to BOCES, either a parent driving or them driving themselves to school here or to BOCES, I'm going to ask that you do it for the simple fact that we have to reduce the number of kids on the bus, and I don't have the ability to in between drop off kids right now. I have just so many BOCES buses, transportation department saying they have no more buses to give us. So therefore, we're trying to add one more BOCES bus to reduce the number of kids that are on it. But I don't have the ability, when the seniors come back, the seniors get off, I can't, anyone who needs a ride, drive them home, because the juniors get right on the bus within minutes, and then they go. There'll be some time to wait the high frequency spots on the bus, but there's not going to be enough time to drive kids back home. I can get kids to, I can envision having any senior going to the BOCES coming to school in their ride in the morning and then going to BOCES and coming back here. I just have no way of getting them home. And I have no way of getting the juniors here out in the community and bring them here to take them. I can get them home and have them take the late bus, and then they can be dropped off home. But it's that midday, there's just no really good answer for them. My hope is I'll get one as time goes on. More questions?
Will the library be open?
We're still working on library questions. It's going to be reduced. To begin the year, we will not have exchange of books or anything like that. That's a great question. I just don't have, I haven't got to the whole library. I can see the physical space being open and used for certain things, but I don't know if the library as you know it is going to be just different. So to begin the year, we're not going to be sending stuff out to kids. We have to come up with a process with the librarians when the stuff is returned, what we do with it. So that's a to be determined yet.
What if you did not receive a Chromebook because you didn't need one at home?
You have to get one. Every child needs to have a Chromebook from the district, and I'll tell you why after I say this statement. So if you did not get a Chromebook, you can call that 751-9399 number, and Mrs. Pavan will put you through the tech department, and they'll set up a time for you to come get your Chromebook. I know the middle school has started making some phone calls. I'm not sure, Mr. Galgovich, if the high school started making phone calls yet.
Anyone who's going to pick up a Chromebook was going through before Carmen, who was
Okay.
the middle school secretary. She's making arrangements for parents.
So if you have not gotten a phone call from Mrs. Carmer, the middle school secretary, please call that 751-9399 number, and we'll make sure you get one. Every student is going to need to have a district-provided Chromebook, and here's the reason why. And I understand. You may have one at home. Your child may have multiple at home, and they're more comfortable using theirs. However, while they're logging in remotely or doing their work in an asynchronous manner, which we'll get to what that means, they need to use the district Chromebook because I have to ensure that every student doesn't have access during the instructional time to certain information. And you can use your imagination what that information is. So anything that is not appropriate for a child to see that a school protects, they have to use our device and go through our network. So our network blocks any pornography. That's just the one off the top of my head I'm thinking about. But any of that information that we're not allowed to give students access to that during the school day. So if they are working on an assignment for us, if they're working on remote or they're remoting in during the school day, they have to be using their school account, not only school email, but their school provided Chromebook, and also our Google Hangout, if that's what is going on that day, if it's a synchronous type of activity. So I have to ensure that no student has access to information that they shouldn't have access to. There's also privacy rights and all those things. So the answer to that is they have to have a district provided machine. So if you didn't get one, or if you thought I have mine at home, they can't use it. They can use that for anything they want other than the schoolwork. I just have to have them have a district device. Other question?
Bluetooth is disabled on Chromebooks. Is Bluetooth needed for wireless printers?
Good question. I don't have an answer to that. We're writing it down right now. And I thought they were opening up Bluetooth on the Chromebooks, but I don't have an answer for that right now. That's a very specific question, but I appreciate it. Mrs. Clark, I will get that answer and try to get it back to you through the tech department. And also if you on the next high school. I know we talked about Bluetooth headphones, because some kids are going to have headphones, so you can expect that as part of your updated supply list. Is that most kids have them already, but they're going to need to bring their headphones in because they can't have the volume between two students going off. For one reason, it disturbs the other person's learning, but it also is, and one of the reasons why we did this is that if the teacher's talking, many times the voice comes out of the microphone and back into try to flip that around, comes out of the speaker and comes back in the microphone and starts crackling everybody else's experience. So that's why we want to have headphones in at all times. There's another question.
Will there be assigned seating in the lunchroom?
Assigned seating in the lunchroom. We're working on the lunchroom seating. We will have in both the high school and the middle school reduced numbers. We already have with the cohorts half the amount of kids here. And then we're looking at the number of lunch periods, the number of students that can fit into the lunchroom. We'll have alternative sites. We have 2 alternative locations that we're going to use as lunchrooms because we have to maintain 6 feet of separation. We haven't talked about assigned seats, but it might be something that we end up, we'll have specific seats for kids to sit at. So they will line up into the cafeteria. As we go into the food service piece, since we're there, they'll line up into the cafeteria, standing on the circles, the Wilson circles, 6 feet apart as they go down the line. They'll be masked. They won't touch any of the food. The food will be put into a container for them. The container will be handed to them. They'll go over and pay for the food or put it into the system. When they finish, they'll go out into the cafeteria and they'll be put into a seat. All students will be 6 feet apart. We haven't gotten past that yet. We haven't talked about assigned seating, but there'll be assigned seats for kids to sit in. So there'll be signs on seats that say, you can sit here, you can sit here, you can sit here. Almost like you have when you go into most restaurants. So we haven't got to the point where actually, this seat is yours for the year. I don't think there's any more questions. Okay, so I'll keep going. Excuse me. Health and safety concerns. So we talked about there'll be directionals in every hallway. There's arrows on the floor with what direction this side of the hallway goes and what direction that side of the hallway. We've measured, there's 6 feet in between those directionals, so students will be required to walk single file down the hall, 6 feet apart, both 6 feet from the person in front of them, 6 feet from the person in back of them, but also the hallways are able to be 6 feet across. They'll be walking with masks on, which gets us to the classroom. One of the things we have to require is mask breaks throughout the day. And in order to get the mask breaks in, the only way I can do it is to require the 6 feet of separation. You probably saw this on the news, that if you can't do the 6 feet of separation, the only way you can do mask breaks is if you take them outside. So that's why we have the number of students down in that cohort to half. I'm going to use the magic number of 10. It's not, every class is a little bit different, but the average is like 10 kids in a class. They can sit 6 feet apart, and when they're sitting, they can take their mask off. When they stand up or they move or go to move around, they need to put their mask on. There won't be much movement because as soon as one student stands up, they're going to be near another student. That person's going to have to put their mask on too. So that's going to create a lot of things. So when they sit, they're going to be in there sitting, not moving around. The teacher is going to be moving at some points and not moving at some points. When the teacher starts moving around, the teacher's going to say, mask breaks over, put your mask on. I need to get up, check for understanding, goes around, checks the class, sit back down, everybody can take their masks off. That'll allow frequent mask breaks, so we don't have to spend all day long sitting, with those masks on, similar to what we are right now in this office. While we're in this office, Mr. Galgovich is 6 feet from me, he's on 6 feet from me to the side. When we get up, we go to the move, we put our mask on. When we get to our own offices and we're by ourselves, we take our masks off. Students are going to be doing the same thing. There are times when people come into the office, you got to put your mask on if you can't maintain the 6 feet of separation. So that's going to happen throughout the day. So while I say you can take your mask off while you're seated, when a teacher gets up and starts moving on, masks are back on. So there's going to be times when they say, listen, I need to check for understanding. I'm getting up, walking around. Everybody put their masks on. And it's not an option. That's not, I don't want to put my mask on. If the student says, I don't want to put my mask on, they're telling me I don't want to be in school. And there'll be a conversation about distance learning. If your child doesn't want to wear a mask in school, your child and you need to choose distance learning because I can't have them in school. That's not Mr. Carter, that's not Mr. Galgovich, that's New York State saying you're going to bring kids in school, you got to be 6 feet apart for instructional, 12 feet for music, band, and gym, and you got to wear a mask certain times. So I've already gotten the whole set of emails from kids and parents. My child doesn't want to wear a mask. Use that as part of your decision making if that's what you want to do. And you need to distance learn. The child enters the building, you need to put your mask on. Anytime you're less than 6 feet, your mask is on. Mine sits on my desk next to me, my Wilson mask. Many times when I walk in the hall, I put it around my ear and I leave it off. I have it in my pocket. If I forget it during the summer, I'm usually can be 6 feet from someone. I can't forget the mask. I have to grab one off the closest office door because if I, at any time, I'm less than 6 feet from somebody, the mask has to be on. And that's not an optional thing. I'm also getting a couple of emails and calls about what is appropriate masks. Appropriate masks are just like appropriate t-shirts. If it's depicting anything that is violent related or drug related or alcohol related, your child will be told to take it off and put one on that is appropriate. It has some appropriate words on it, appropriate pictures. They'll be asked to take it off, put on a mask. And if they choose not to take it off, that means they're choosing not to be in school. And we will make a phone call and make that happen for them. There's another question.
What is the earliest I can drop my kids off in the morning?
Mr. Galgovich?
As far as when students are going to be able to enter the building, that's something we're still having ongoing conversations about. Right now, we're looking at probably around the time that the buses are rolling in. It's going to be around between 7:30 and 7:40. But we also have to work out with when our teachers are technically starting their day for student purposes. So it's an ongoing conversation that we're still having, and we'll share that information out most likely to our recommendations with the students.
There's another question?
Is there a link where we can purchase the Wilson masks?
Well, we actually have these beautiful Wilson masks. There's also an all black one with a W, and there's one of those scarf pull-up ones. I think right now the link is only been shared between staff members, and I know there's a plan to send it out. I just don't know when that's going to happen. So the answer to that is we've talked about it. We just have not sent them out yet. I think the first wave kind of buried the company under a little bit, so we're going to let that settle out a little bit. And then Mr. Roth is heading up that link, so I'll defer to him. But there will be a link. It's just not out. We've talked about providing, that link to parents and things like that and kids. I know that there's been some conversations with the PTA, Mr. Galgovich. Do you want to add that into the mix also?
Yes, the PTSA did have some conversations, and they're going to be providing masks and water bottles for other students that's going to be attending school in person through the school year. So I'm sure they'll be getting more information, how we're carrying that. And that is something that the PTSA graciously offers to our kids.
So the PTA at the high school, middle school, I know the elementary also are providing a mask for every student and a water bottle. And the water bottle really is just a great proactive thing because none of our water fountains are going to be open. So because if you press a water fountain, put your mouth on it and drink, you are putting bacteria on the water fountain. So we have shut them all off. But we do have bottle fillers throughout the buildings, both buildings. So the students will be able to fill their water bottle as time goes on. So that is part of what we're putting in place. So we appreciate that with the PTA. There's another question.
Wouldn't it be more cohesive to have the B cohort do their training Thursday the 10th and Friday the 11th, and have the A cohort do their training the next Monday the 14th and Tuesday the 15th?
It's not what we have planned. I mean, I don't know about cohesive. I think none of this is cohesive when it comes to this planning. We wanted to be able on the 14th be able to say that everybody is online. So if the A cohort kids or B cohorts or kids are doing that on Thursday and Friday, and Monday and Tuesday are the A cohort, that means the distance learning kids, the D cohort, don't start for Wednesday. And we still have to have the 180 days of school in. With this plan of starting really the 10th, I have exactly 100, or was it the 10th? I left my post-it notes somewhere. The 10th. I have exactly 180 days in the calendar, and I need 180 days in order to get the funding to be able to open school and to keep it going. So while, yes, I can see what you mean by cohesive, the fact that Thursday and Friday are a B day anyways, I don't believe we need 2 days to do training. I think 1 day is going to be enough. And then the follow-up training and the continued movement is going to begin on the 14th. That's just the separate days are really to get the hygiene training done. And then, here's your Chromebook. This is how you're going to log in. Basically, that needs to be done. Get the flow of the building going a little bit. We don't envision 2 days needed for that. So while I certainly understand what you mean by the cohesiveness, meaning, Thursday and Friday are traditionally, B days right now. We're saying we're starting that on the 14th, that we're going to have the Tuesday or the Thursday and Friday just for training days for students. There's another question.
When the kids are not in school and they are online learning, what's the time they have to be checked in by online, and how do they check in?
So there's going to be invites that are going to have to be sent. When an invite sent, so each teacher is going to have to send an invite to their student through their student email from Google Hangout. This is for synchronous. Remember, there are two types of online remote distance learning, whatever you want to call it. I've been adding them all in. So there's two types: there's synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous means in the moment, and when in the moment happens, the child will be sent a link, an invite through the Google Hangout, the Google Classroom. That invite they'll be asked to join. They will be asked to join this, at the time of that class. So when the schedules come out, the teacher will send an invite for that day, in that period, and that child will need to join. Now, it's different at the elementary school. This is specific to middle and high school. An invite will be sent out, and the child will be asked to join. We are well aware that there's going to be connectivity issues and things like that. There's going to be flexibility all around. I did my middle school program earlier last week, and we went to go on 11 o'clock, and we couldn't get everything up and operational. I had already done an elementary one that went really well. The middle school beginning was atrocious. We had to say through a text to everybody or through the chat, we're going to redo this at 12 noon when we figure out what the issue is, and the issue is between YouTube and a setting we had on our computer. That's going to happen at the beginning of the year. Technology is only as good as technology when it works. There's going to be times when it doesn't work. I can envision, I'm telling teachers we got to be as flexible as possible. When the class starts and it's not working, send an assignment out. Have a couple in your hands to be able to, a couple in your mind to say, hey, listen, everybody do this. So the synchronous learning will be done through invite using our district application, which is Google Hangout. Asynchronous, which is going to be used on certain days, maybe on Wednesdays, up to each individual teacher to choose synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous is when an assignment is sent out. And if the assignment is completed, that also constitutes attendance. So there won't be any logging in required. So every class is going to be different, but I've asked them to use as much synchronous learning as possible. That gives them as much contact with the children. And then if there could be issues on the child end, the child's not able to log in that day, they're going to have to be able to send them something to work on, because the connectivity in that area is just not where it should be. We've had that in every one of our meetings that I've had. Teachers know that kids are fading in and out. I have teachers fading in and out, things like that. We will continue to work on that. It's when they don't engage at all that we're going to be having a problem. Another question? I think I answered that one well.
What would be the protocol if a student gets a bloody nose in class, and how would they get to the clinic safely?
They would take tissues just like they would now and put them on their nose and walk to the clinic. And then we have protocol on our end right now that would be enhanced with sanitizing and cleaning. So there's already protocol for bloody noses in which we have to use a certain bag. That bag has to be removed from the school. It cannot be put with the rest of the garbages. The rest of the garbage, it has to be separated and removed separately. The only change would be, sorry about the phone ringing. The only change would be we'd also include the materials used to sanitize. So right now, if a student has a bloody nose, we use a different color bag. It's a red bag for that. The materials, anything that's on the floor gets cleaned up, and everything involved goes in the red bag, tied, and it's disposed of separately from our regular garbage. The only difference is that area would also have to be sanitized, and then those sanitizing materials would have to also be put into the red bag. Another question?
There was a question when the high school schedules would be coming out.
Awesome question. As soon as we have them done. So right now, some of this is on our part. We've made some changes. Some of it's on COVID's part with creating the cohorts and the A, B, C, and D cohorts. And then some of it's on the parents' part, where we have a number of parents that have not responded one way or another to what learning model they want or things like that. So we've been having to reach out to them, and that's created some of the slowdown. Once I have an idea of every parent in high school, middle school, and elementary school of what learning model, some just chose not to answer anything. So we need to contact them and say, no, listen, you have a choice, distance learning or hybrid, which one is it going to be? Transportation, you have a choice of driving your child yourself or district transportation. So once we have that all complete, and I know those phone calls have been going on all week, then we can move to the schedule. So you can expect schedules late. How late, I don't know. I'm hoping this week we can wrap them up and then start talking about looking at numbers to make sure that we have the right amount of students in the classes, or if we have a particular class that's over, we may be contacting parents and saying, I know your alphabet's here, but we might need to, move you to cohort A because I can't be over in that class. We'll have to have that conversation amongst between the parents and the administrators. So, I'm hopeful by the end of next week, but I'm not going to guarantee. I'm going to keep saying schedules will be out when we're done separating the kids by cohort, putting them in classes, and getting them up. Yes, we've had a good long time to do it, but we had to wait to guidance to see what we could do, the guidance from New York State, which right now has only been out, I think, 2 weeks at this point, before we can start separating into sections and cohorts. So as soon as we have them done, we'll get them out to you.
Will the hotspots be password protected, and can hotspots be accessed by all students in case internet is lost at home?
The hotspots are password protected. I'm just trying to think because I borrowed one when I went down to Letchworth to be able to log into some reopening meetings. I went to Letchworth for vacation for a week. Yes, they are password protected. Only one person can log in at a time, and they are available on a limited basis based upon people who have no internet at all. So, for example, we only have a certain number. I don't have 1,000 hotspots in the district, so I have a limited number of hotspots. It's going to start with people who have internet capability right now. They won't need a hotspot at first. We will go to parents and families that have no internet at all. Now, if you have no internet at all, in order to use the hotspot has to be close or near a cell tower. So hotspots work off of cell towers. So we're envisioning right now of the people who responded to the first survey, there's about 56 families right now that do not have internet. I don't know off the top of my head how many of those 56 are close to cell towers and who are not close to cell towers. So the first priority is going to be the people that have no internet access that are close to cell towers. And hotspots will work. If the hotspot's not going to work in the area, I'm not going to give it to them. I will then go from there to families that have more than one child in the family, because I'm envisioning that if you have more than one child in the family, the ability for both or three kids to log in at the same time is going to reduce that internet connectivity. So we're going to have to have some reliable way of figuring that out. Moving forward from there, if you have no internet activity at all and are near no cell towers, now we're looking at how do we get the ability for a child to turn in work, not turn in work. We're anticipating some kids that we're probably going to have parents come pick up pockets, very limited handful of kids. And also, we have internet in our parking lots. So if you live close, you probably can pick it up. But in each one of our elementary, middle, and high school parking lot, we have a internet repeater. So the district's Wi-Fi gets sent out through the buildings into the parking lots. And those will be operational by the beginning of school. So I envision if a child needs to pick up work electronically, a parent can drive into a parking lot, let them download it, go back home, work on it the next day, things like that. So we're going to have to, there are going to be individuals that we're going to have to deal with differently based upon connectivity. I have to provide an option for that.
With Wednesday being a cleaning day, will there also be an online learning day?
Yes. Wednesday in the plan, online, and the one I have mentioned is a remote day. Wednesday, no kids are in building. except for, cohort C, which is our 1201 class, it's our life skill class, they're here every day. We're just gonna work around it.
Is it at least possible to get a list of which teachers my child would be working with, even though the schedules are not finalized?
I don't know if that is even an option right now. That's a very specific question that I would suggest either calling the high school main office to see if Mr. Galgovich is able to, bring up the schedule and let you know. Again, changes are being made at the, moment's notice right now. We're doing a lot of juggling the classes. So that's a very specific question that I would suggest either calling the 751-9399 or calling Mr. Galgovich directly in the high school to see if he's able to tell you. I mean, he might be able to bring up the schedule and just tell you right then and there. I don't know, but I'll have you deal with that as an individual question. Is that done? Okay. We're out of questions right now. I'm going to go back to my list, but please continue moving forward. There was a statement at the end, just a suggestion, maybe the Stevenson building could somehow be utilized. We've taken a look at that in multiple different avenues. One with, possibly moving kids over, spreading the elementary out. The issue is we don't have the teaching staff to be able to do it. The problem is we need to get, if you're going to go, even the high school, middle school, in the elementary, we're using barriers. High school, middle school, barriers are not movable. You can't use barriers where kids can move them around because that's the only way you can do it. Two kids cannot be sitting at the same barrier throughout the day. The guidance says you can't do that. The only way to do it is move it around. And our medical director has cautioned against not and told us you can't move these things around. They need to be affixed to the desk and not move them around. So that's why we for the middle school and high school, they change classes. There's no way of bringing the teachers to the kids. All the kids have to go to the teachers. So it's just the way a high school model is set up. It's not going to help us having the building because I don't have the staff to split the kids up and make them smaller. So I don't know if that makes sense. We've explored every option. Not to mention the fact that Stevenson Elementary has been closed through SED. In order to open it, we have to meet today's guidelines, not the ones that for the building. So the building would have to be upgraded at the cost of that. It's just prohibitive. So it's not something. It is something that we considered. It's just wasn't an option that we can make happen in the current time. One more question?
Do the vaccine requirements apply to students enrolled in distance learning?
Yes, they do. They do. And the reason is that any time the governor says schools open full time, distance learning people are coming back. Okay? So yes, if you are registered as a student, whether it be a distance student or a hybrid student, middle school, high school, all the guidelines for vaccines, you're allowed to participate in sports, you're allowed to go to BOCES. Only kids that none of those guidelines pertain to is if you homeschool your child. And that's a whole different model. If you're a registered student on distance learning or hybrid mode, you have to follow all the guidelines for vaccines, health, the health screenings for entering the building every day, and physicals, whatever the year is, you have to have the physical, the nurses send those out. Yes, all of those have to be met. Okay, going back to food service. So we talked about cafeteria, moving kids in and out. We will also provide food for students that are not in school. So if your child is on distance learning or hybrid that day, there will be a place to pick up food. It will be pickup only. We will not be delivering it, and it will be from one location, which as of August 18th at 11:58, it's the high school, middle school door to the kitchen in the back of the ZIP parking lot, near the ZIP parking lot. That's where we're going to have food pickup. We're going to create a reservation portion on our website. So if you need food a particular day, you can reserve it, have it ready for you. You come up to the door, wait for you to signal that you are there, and then the food will be brought out to you, and you can take it back home. I think that's it for food services. I think another question popped up. Yep, go ahead.
Can students bring their completed physical forms to the school the first day of school, or should they be mailed to the clinic?
I think the easiest thing to do and the best thing to do is you want to have all that stuff done ahead of time. Just mail it to the school, to the clinic, and make sure it's here. Then it's in. All the records are set before the child gets here. Now, if you don't have the ability to do that, or if you forget as you get closer, absolutely send it in on the first day of school. The clinic will be there. It'll look different. There'll be an indoor, outdoor. There's places for kids to stand 6 feet apart. The nurse is going to have full PPE on throughout the entire day. Face shield, N95 mask, gowns, gloves, the whole, everything that they would wear if they were in a hospital. That is one of the requirements. So it'll look different, but the clinic will still be available to kids. Okay, next is technology. We talked about the hotspots a little bit, but we have purchased a number of hotspots in order to fill the gap with some of the kids that didn't have internet. Each student was provided a Chromebook. I talked about the need for the child to use the Chromebook. Our district provided Chromebook during the time that they're either logged in synchronously or if they're doing asynchronous work, and it has to do with code of conduct and the acceptable use policy that everyone signed. If you haven't gotten your Chromebook, you should be getting a phone call by the middle school secretary. She volunteered to take on that task. And then I think the only other thing is to talk a little bit about the district is purchasing certain programs for assessments and certain programs for allowing your child to interact with some of the documents that the teachers have. Many of your students, most of the students at the high school and middle school are going to have touchscreen computers. However, I was notified, actually one of the parents mentioned it last night on the district call and then sent me an email because I made this statement. It's my understanding that every student at the high school and middle school has a touchscreen Chromebook. And that was true until it wasn't. So there's a handful. I mean, I looked at the list, there's about 35, 40 kids that we didn't have touchscreens for. We gave them one of the non-touch screens. The touchscreen ones have been ordered. They'll still be able to interact with the computer and interact with the documents using the keypad. We're looking into programs that may allow us to do some more things. But we have touchscreen computer Chromebooks on order. And once they come in, they'll be swapped out. Just like I mentioned yesterday in my call to the all district, we have about 200 kids in the district, most of them at the elementary, like I said, about 35, 40 of them in the high school, middle school, that we did not have. When we ordered the touchscreens, the date for delivery was way out. And a lot of that has to do with what we're all dealing with. Manufacturing is just what it is right now. It's all slow. Many factories are half capacity across the United States. Some of the states that are really being hit hard, they're even less than half capacity. They're being closed. Not that this means anything or matters. We ordered a couch at home in March, just before all this happened. They told me it would be here in six weeks. COVID hit, everything shut down. We got it last month. So that was 5 months before it came. Because it was in a state that had manufacturing that was slow. That's what they're telling us, these Chromebooks, is that they're making them, they're just not making them at the time that we think. So we were able to get our hands on 200 Chromebooks that weren't touchscreen. So we ordered them and got them in, so at least we can put something in the kids' hands. And then as soon as the touchscreen ones come in, which is supposed to be sometime in October, we will swap the ones that the kids have with these touchscreens, and then the ones that were non-touch screens will be extras. They're going to be ones that we're going to use when somebody breaks something. So if you break yours, we're going to have to send it out to be repaired or order a new one. And in the meantime, you're going to get this one to use. Hopefully that makes sense. I think that's everything with technology. There's a lot of them. Next part is BOCES. There's a lot of unanswered questions as it relates to BOCES. And I know that BOCES had their first program last night. We did not get a chance to see it. It was 7 o'clock last night. I was actually finishing up the evening program here. I do plan on, they have 2 of them today. two parent reopening meetings today, frequently asked questions or forums. One's at 3 o'clock today, and then the other one is at 7 o'clock tonight. So if your child's going to BOCES, I suggest you take a look at that. I plan on watching one of the two, and I've suggested to Mr. Galgovich to watch one of the two so we know what they're saying. And there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to do between now and the beginning of school. So we'll be communicating directly to the 11th and 12th graders that are going to BOCES, about transportation, about individual situations that we may have to. The best and easiest case is if you're able to get your child to and from BOCES, that's a really big help to us. If you can't, we can get them back and forth to school. We can get them to BOCES. In the midday, that's going to be the issue. It's the child that can't get to BOCES or school, or the child that can't get home from BOCES at school in the morning. That's where we just don't have a good answer for yet, what that's going to look like. And now we just added in the comment, which I appreciated, about BOCES starting on the 8th. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do with that week too, because we want to make sure. The easiest thing that would have happened is that BOCES would have provided a hybrid model also. But again, I know that one of the issues they're having is their hybrid model. If they did a AB hybrid model, many districts in the area are doing them different. Some are going AB, AB, AB. And I just didn't think that was a consistent way of doing it, because in some weeks you'd be in 3, and the other weeks you'd be in 2 days. It just didn't seem to me, and you can't really do the deep cleaning. I don't know how they're doing it. Maybe they have more cleaning staff, but they can't. I couldn't see how we could do the deep cleaning in between the cohorts AB. So we did consider it. We just thought the consistent of 2 days a week, you know what the 2 days are every week, and then 3 days at home. You know what 3 days you're home based on the cohort you're in. So that's sort of how we came to the decision of doing our A and B. But I know other districts, even around us, one district, their remote day is Monday. They're doing AABB. I know another district on the other side of us, Newfane, they're going every other day. So how does BOCES go to a hybrid model, and everybody in the area has got a different type of hybrid model? And I understand why everybody has a different. It's based upon their district, their ability to meet the guidelines. It would have been a lot easier if we all went to the same hybrid model. But unfortunately, it didn't happen, which is requiring BOCES to be able to say they're going in full time. But I have not heard that they've come up with any kind of a distance model for any student that doesn't want to return to in person. So that's BOCES. Athletics is on hold. I don't have any answers for athletics other than to say that I know they're supposed to make some kind of a decision before the September 23rd, so there will be nothing prior to September 23rd. I've heard a ton of different talk about having a season having 3 seasons starting in January. I don't know where the section is on that, or state athletics department. I haven't. They're communicating, they're meeting. Decisions have not been made. As soon as we know, we'll get that out. I do know that we are not going to have any extracurricular activities to start the year. So I'm going to say for the month of September, there's going to be nothing after school until we know what it looks like to get this building ready for the next day. So until, at least for the month of September, there's going to be no after school activities, and then we'll see what we can bring back, or if we can bring anything back. I need to have, when the last student leaves at 3:08, when the building closes at 3:08, 3:15, then the crew's going out and they're sanitizing the entire building, making sure it's ready for the next day. The only thing I didn't really get touch bases I didn't get really in depth with teaching and learning. I talked about the hybrid and the AA, remote day Wednesday, cohort BB. So we broke the kids down into 4 cohorts. Cohort A is letters A through L. Cohort B is M through Z. We have allowed parents that have kids in the same household be able to make a decision on what cohort they want to be in, or maybe the district will make that decision based upon numbers. But we are allowing them to be in the same cohort. So you may have a child in your household that has a last name beginning with Z, and one that has a last name beginning with B. we would work with the parent to get them together into one cohort. Now, that being said, we've had a few parents make requests based upon friends that, my child's in cohort B or my child's in cohort A, and most of their friends are in the opposite cohort. I've had way too many phone calls to be able to get that to happen. So right now, and I don't see a way we're going to change this. I can't accommodate friend groups. There's just no way to do it fairly. There's no way to do it. I'm going to end up with more kids in the A cohort than B cohort, and it's going to defeat the purpose of why we're doing this. And I certainly understand. I just don't have a good way of doing it. There's some natural movement that's going to happen, and if we need to move somebody in from one cohort to the next because of the number of kids in the class, and it helps that child out, I don't have a problem you communicating that to your building principal. But at the same token, we're not going all, I'm not taking friend requests because it's just not something we're able to do. So that's how the cohorts are going to. Cohort A is basically A through L. B is M through Z. Cohort C is our 12-on-1, our life skills program, and they're going to be here every day along with the elementary. So cohort C is elementary kids, pre-K through 5, and they'll be at the elementary all day, minus the kids that chose to be distance learning, because those are cohort B. The instruction will be a mix of synchronous or in-person, live instruction, both remote live, remoting in, and in-person, and then a mix of asynchronous where an assignment will be given. I've asked the teachers to provide video directions and video backup to what the child needs to do with that assignment, so they're not just left hanging. There's going to be a lot of sending out clips of information for students to be able to synthesize, to help them be able to do the work that they're going to do. Many of the programs that we're in the process of purchasing are going to aid or assist us in that matter. I'll let Mr. Gelgovich talk about orientation a little bit, because I know he's going to have a 9th grade orientation. Do you want to give a little bit of an update where we are with that?
Yeah, so 9th grade orientation is going to be done virtually. We'll work out together the presentation that I will send out virtually, probably sometime next week. I don't have a date on the calendars yet, but probably sometime next week that I'll be going out. I did get a few requests from individuals who are brand new to the district, who have never been in high school before. So what I think I'm going to work on as well is to organize a brief in-person tour for those people that are brand new to the district. This is not going to be something for every incoming 9th grader. If you're a student previously at Wilson Middle School, we have combined buildings. They've been around. Confident that they'll be able to find their building. But for anyone that was brand new to the district, I will work on getting something on that. That information will be shared probably in the next week or so.
So that gets us to the end of my list. I made sure I caught, hope I said everything. And this is your chance to ask any question you might still have. Give it a minute or so. And if the questions don't come, then I will sign off. We're approaching the 1 hour and 9 minutes, which has been the basic time that these have been going on. If you have specific questions, I know Mrs. Pavan is typing that number back into the chat. Please call that 751-9399 number. I think I've had no complaints about Mrs. Pavan's ability to answer questions, or at least get the answer for you. If you have not filled out the transportation form or chosen one of the cohorts, we're going to have to track you down, and that's going to slow us down in getting schedules out. Please call that 751-9399 number. Mrs. Pavan can put you into the system of what cohort, not what cohort, what learning model you want, distance or hybrid, and then also whether or not you have the ability to transport your child or you need district transportation. You You see that number in there. Any questions at all, we'll be glad to answer them on the specific. I've been answering emails, and I think I'm up to date, except for the ones that occurred in the last hour. So if you have emailed me and you have gotten a response, give me 1 second. If you emailed me and haven't gotten a response, I'm going to tell you I'm up to date on all my emails, except if you've emailed me in the last hour. That means either the email didn't go through or it got lost in the abyss. Please call or email me again. So I'm up to date on all my parent emails and responses back. The last ones I did were at noon, or excuse me, at 11, just before we started. So I'm up to date. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you didn't get your question answered. The building principals have been awesome. But before they're answering parent questions, they're checking with me just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're not giving different answers, but we're emailing each other, copying each other in, so that hopefully we won't have where you're going to one person, didn't get the answer you wanted, so you're going to go to another person. We're trying to make sure that doesn't happen, and we appreciate it if you don't. We're staying in the loop. We're trying to accommodate what we can. Unfortunately, these are unprecedented times. Therefore, my ability to say yes to certain things is just not there. And I appreciate your patience. And like I said, our ultimate goal for this entire reopening is for all of us, school community, parents, students, staff, and teachers, to work together to have as normal as a reopening of school as possible, and also return to normalcy. So as we go throughout the months, to hopefully be able to get back into in person. One of the things we didn't touch on that I did in the other groups is if a student says yes, or a parent says yes to any of those health screenings, or if during the day they come down to the nurse's office and says, I'm not feeling well, I have a headache, I have these 3 symptoms, that child is going to be isolated. If they're in school and they come down with these symptoms, they're going to be isolated in one of our isolation rooms. Our isolation rooms have air scrubbers in them to make sure that those particles are eliminated. A parent will be called, and the child will be requested to be picked up and sent home. If a child is at home, or a parent is at home doing the screening for the child, and the child says yes to any one of those symptoms, they're not to come to school. They can log in remotely, and it will still count as attendance. But if they're healthy enough to do their work, they should be able to do their work remotely. But if they say yes to any of those symptoms, this is by Department of Health guidance, they have the magic on who and how people return to school. And they have clearly said to us that if your child says yes to any of those symptoms, or if they become ill during the day, they either need to stay home or we need to send them home. And they have to go see a doctor. They have to go see a healthcare specialist, or a primary care physician, or to immediate care. And I absolutely understand that is a burden. And it's going to slow down the return. I have communicated to the Department of Health that they better make sure the doctors know of this, because many of the doctors are doing telemedicine, and they're doing like this. They're going to need to do more of that with the nurses and the nurse practitioners, because people are going to need a note to return. So as of right now, on August 18th at 12:17, that if you come down with symptoms, or you say yes to any of those symptomatic items, which is fever, cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, muscle aches, body aches, headache, loss of smell, loss of taste, sore throat, congestion, runny nose, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, which cross over into so many different other illnesses, which I understand, and also into many of the common things that we all deal with, migraines, sinus issues, and allergies, and things like that. I understand. But if you mark yes to any of those items and you are symptomatic, you cannot be in school. You have to get cleared to come back. So right now, there's a little bit of a disagreement between the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the Department of Health. The CDC says in order to return, you have to either get a doctor's note or a negative COVID test. Department of Health right now has taken a stronger stance on this and said if a child is symptomatic and is out of school, they need to go see a doctor, get a doctor's note to clear them to return, and a negative COVID test also. Now, I know, and everybody should be going, what? Because that's what I said when I saw it. It's not what the CDC has said, but we've got, as of Friday, we got some information from the Department of Health that said that it's under review, their policy of return to school. And this is for staff or students. There is some different guidelines for staff that we deem essential workers, but for students and the rest of the staff that are go home with these symptoms or have those symptoms in the morning, there is a requirement right now to get a doctor's note and a negative COVID test. The guidance that I heard, and it's a conversation that I actually was in one of these telecalls with the Department of Health on Friday, is they're reviewing their guidance and reviewing what the CDC says. We expect it to be changed to or by the end of next week before school starts. Because when I said I envisioned that many of our kids are going to be out, it's going to be remote all over the place. Kids have these symptoms all the time. It's easier just to either get a doctor's note. If you get a doctor's note and a COVID test, you're adding a week by the time these tests come back. So I don't think that that's doable. Like I said, the Department of Health, we have to take their guidance. I have held off on putting these flow charts that they have given us on the website until we have a clear picture of what they're requiring. Again, these guidelines are not coming from me. We have to take our guidance from the state Department of Health and also the state ed. So once we are able to give you a clear picture of that, I will get that information out to all parents. And the big word for the opening of school is flexibility. I envision kids in and out, I envision staff members in and out, waiting for testing, waiting for doctor's notes, symptomatic, all those things are going to be happening, and we will continue to move forward in the best possible way. I also envision as we get closer to the winter and the storms start hitting that if we have a remote option, we use the remote option instead of calling a snow day. Just send them a phone call home and say, due to the weather conditions, we're going Friday, January blank is a remote day instead of a non-teaching day. So all those things are, as we get closer, we're going to continue to communicate. It's part of the reason why I wanted to have multiple of these parent forums, question and answers. And Ms. Clark, thank you for your kind words there. I will continue to have these as much as possible. We've got another one for high school scheduled next week, Monday. Thursday of this week, there's middle school, elementary school, and middle school. Those are all on the YouTube page that you can log into. And I'm assuming that I'm going to have to continue to do this. So I will, as we get closer to the opening, I'll start adding some more days in so you have a good understanding of where we're at. I haven't seen a question pop up in a minute or 2 minutes, so I'm assuming we've gone to the point where nobody has any questions. So at this point, I am going to sign off and say thank you very much for joining us for this high school parent reopening forum. And again, we have another one next week, Monday, if you choose to come on, or if you know somebody who has not yet logged in and wants to, you can please assist them in getting to this site. I will be here next Monday. I don't know about Mr. Galgovich yet, but we might both be here. But I want to thank you for participating in this, and your questions are helpful. So please don't stop the questions. The more things you question, the more things we come up. We've thought of a lot of stuff, but there are things we haven't even bridged yet. Those that when you have questions, put them in either the chats when we're talking like this. Send emails to us. If I don't have the answer right away, at least gives me a chance to start thinking things through. Just like the example of the BOCES starting on the 8th. It's going to be in my thought process now for the next day or so until I have to see if I can come up with an answer for it. So I appreciate all of your efforts and certainly appreciate you logging in and listening to us. So Thank you. Have a great afternoon.